This is United Network News with Sunny Galt, Calen, Kimberly Gogan, and our field messengers from around the world. Here's today's real news.
When was the last time you thought about the roads and bridges you use every day? The truth is, much of the U.S. infrastructure is aging, overworked, and struggling to keep up with modern demands. It's an issue posing significant risks that could lead to even bigger problems for communities across the country.
Infrastructure is more than just roads and bridges. It includes water systems, power plants, schools, parks, and transportation networks that keep society running. In the U.S., much of this critical infrastructure is aging and struggling to meet modern demands. Roads, bridges, and public transit systems are in disrepair, leading to high maintenance costs and safety concerns. 1 in 3 bridges needs repairs, according to the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. Meanwhile, the CDC Foundation says millions of Americans still lack access to affordable, high-speed internet, especially in rural areas, and more than 2 million people live without running water or basic plumbing. Decades of underinvestment have left many essential systems unable to keep up with today's needs.
In the Americas, public construction and infrastructure are a real disaster. They are typically very old, poorly maintained, heavily used, and, in general, the feeling is that the whole system was stalled many, many decades ago. To give you an idea, in the land of Apple, Google, and Tesla, a quarter of all bridges have serious maintenance problems. Of the 15,500 dams that supply water and electricity to the American economy, 1 in 7 is in need of critical repairs. You only have to go down to the New York subway, the most famous subway in the world, to realize that something strange is going on in the United States. Dirt, awful smells, terribly deteriorated facilities. These are the things that can be found on a daily basis. But we are not only talking about subways. It's a very similar story with airports, roads, trains, and bridges. We're talking about a real national problem. The richest and most powerful country on the face of the earth is falling apart, at least as far as infrastructure is concerned.
The American Society of Civil Engineers regularly grades the nation's infrastructure, and its most recent report gave it an overall C-. Of the 17 categories assessed, 11 received grades in the D range. Public transit earned the lowest score, a D-, as nearly half of Americans lack access to reliable systems, and aging infrastructure like subway tunnels and stations urgently needs repairs. Dams, levees, and stormwater systems are also at risk, particularly in the face of stronger storms and heavier rainfall, which often overwhelm these failing systems. Instances like the 2020 dam collapse in Midland, Michigan, the 2021 Texas power grid failure during freezing weather, and Flint, Michigan's 2014 drinking water crisis highlight the real dangers of neglecting infrastructure. Beyond safety concerns, these issues have financial consequences. The American Society of Civil Engineers also says crumbling infrastructure costs Americans $3,300 annually in hidden expenses like traffic delays, car repairs, and higher fuel costs.
Did you know that every 4 years, the American Society of Civil Engineers releases an infrastructure report card? And that in 2017, the average grade for all U.S. infrastructure, so every road, bridge, port, and so on, was D+. But things got better in 2021. And in fact, that year, the grade climbed to the highest it's been in 20 years, C-. At the release of the 2021 report card, the executive director of the ASCE said, "We have not made the investments to maintain infrastructure that in some cases was built more than 50 years ago." He's right. What's worse is that we keep building more with no game plan for the maintenance of any of the new stuff, much less the stuff that's receiving D's and F's, and in some cases is literally crumbling before our eyes. If we can't afford to maintain what we've already built, why do we keep building new things?
Most U.S. infrastructure was built back in the 1960s and has been largely neglected since. The Urban Institute says in 2017, less than 25% of infrastructure spending came from the federal government, leaving states and local governments to handle most of the costs. When roads and buildings seem fine, they're often ignored, and people assume they're safe. But by 2020, struggling state and city budgets forced many to patch problems instead of investing in lasting fixes, says HR Construction Group. Fixing the U.S. infrastructure means tackling aging systems and keeping up with growing needs. One effective approach is investing in modernizing roads, bridges, and public transit. However, finding solutions isn't always easy, and there are plenty of challenges along the way.
The California high-speed train project, for example, started issuing bonds 14 years ago with an initial budget of $10 billion. Today, not a single kilometer of track has been laid, and estimated costs have skyrocketed to $128 billion, rivaling the entire Apollo space program adjusted for inflation. The root causes are manifold, from bureaucratic delays and redundant studies to consultant fees and inflated material costs.
Fixing these problems takes a mix of solutions: more funding, better maintenance, and smarter tech to boost efficiency and resilience. Public-private partnerships and community input are key to creating sustainable plans. It's all about setting priorities and taking action, creating opportunities for restoration projects that people are ready to bring to life.
The Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland is an awe-inspiring natural wonder. Its near-perfect hexagonal columns have baffled scientists and inspired countless legends. UNN Field Messenger Amy takes us on a journey to this enchanting place.
My name is Amy, Field Messenger for United Network News. I'd like to take you to the northern cliffs of Ireland, to a unique place called the Giant's Causeway. It's a site known for its unusual rock formations. There are hexagonal columns that are tightly interlocked that rise from the ground. Here's the side of the small cliff we'll climb to get to the top of the columns. At the top of the columns, you can see it looks like a vast array of stepping stones, each a different height. And these column steps made it really easy to get to the top of the cliff. With a little patience and balance, both young children and older adults were able to make it to the top. The local lore tells the story of why this place is called the Giant's Causeway. They say an Irish giant built the causeway to make his way to Scotland to duel another giant who resided there. But geologists say it was formed millions of years ago during a period of volcanic activity. And when the lava cooled, it formed these basalt hexagonal columns that rose from the ground. It was a lot of fun walking and jumping from one column to another. It's like Mother Nature made these perfect steps to climb to the top of the Irish coast. Thanks for exploring this unique and beautiful place in Northern Ireland with me. This is Amy, Field Messenger for United Network News.
It's hard to believe, but many children in the U.S. go hungry at school because their families can't afford lunch. Lunch debt and poverty leave students without the nutritious meals they need to focus, learn, and grow. In a country with so much abundance, it's heartbreaking that so many children are still struggling to get a basic meal.
Millions of school children receive free meals through the National School Lunch Program if their family earns at or below 130% of the federal poverty line. Families making between 130% and 185% qualify for reduced price meals. All other children from families with sufficient income must pay for school meals. A 2023 study from the George Mason University points out families near the cutoff often struggle to afford those full-priced meals. In fact, Families who are told they earn too much to qualify for free lunch often struggle to pay for enough food for themselves, especially with food prices rising faster than everything else. Confusion about eligibility and application processes can also leave children without access to the free meals programs. Many families are unaware they can reapply during the school year or get help with the application process, including translation services.
With the end of free school meals, some students are walking away with empty trays. According to a survey from the School Nutrition Association, unpaid lunch debt has ballooned to over $19 million across the U.S.
Some families just don't have the resources to pay for those meals right now.
Fonda Ramp is the director of child nutrition programs with the PA Department of Education. With the pandemic program expiring, families must now reapply for assistance with the National School Lunch Program, which is based on income level. However, some students in need are still being left behind.
There's another large percentage of children, it's about 18%, that are in food insecure households, but they do not qualify for free or reduced price meals. So those are the families that are really struggling right now.
Experts warn penalizing children for not being able to afford school lunches can cause lasting harm. Kids from low-income families often face stigma and bullying because of meal debt. A 2023 report from the Campaign for Children shows some schools punish students by throwing away their lunches, making them wear stickers, or forcing them to do chores. In Arkansas, for example, students without lunch money may even have to work for their meals. While some states have rules to protect kids from these punishments, those rules don't stop peers from shaming them. Many schools give students with unpaid lunch debt a cold cheese sandwich instead of a hot meal. And some older students are denied food altogether. In extreme cases, schools block students with meal debt from graduation or threaten parents with foster care. Food insecurity leads to serious mental, emotional, and physical issues for children, with studies linking lunch shaming to chronic stress and low self-esteem, creating trauma that can last into adulthood.
What if I told you that nearly 1 in 6 kids in the US face food insecurity? That's over 12 million children going hungry every day. This isn't just about missing a meal. It's about stunted growth, poor mental health, and falling behind in school. Studies show that food insecure children are more likely to struggle with concentration, leading to lower academic performance. The emotional toll is staggering too, with kids experiencing higher rates of anxiety and depression. As families battle rising costs, the cycle of poverty deepens. If we don't address this crisis now, we risk losing an entire generation's potential. Are we really okay with that? Think again.
A Guardian investigation found many U.S. school districts have policies allowing parents with unpaid meal debt to be reported to Child Protective Services, potentially leading to family separation. In Louisiana, schools are required to notify social services if a child is denied 3 meals in a school year. Nearly half of North Carolina's districts have similar policies, and some New Jersey schools previously involved police for meal debt over $90. While many districts declined to comment, some said they don't report families despite these policies, leaving decisions to child welfare agencies. Unpaid school meal charges are considered federal debt, and a 2023 proposed bill to cancel school lunch debt failed. Until policies change, schools must follow federal rules unless local funds or donations cover the debt. Some states are stepping in to provide free meals for all students. California, Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont already cover free meals, while Colorado, Minnesota, Michigan, and New Mexico have similar programs covering both breakfast and lunch. In many other places, Families struggling to pay rely on the help of charities and kind individuals stepping in to cover meal debts.
We got Southern caviar down there, the boiled peanut. Just put it in the kids' lunch thing, you know. That makes you feel good.
The kids thing started in 2017 when he talked to the head of the nutrition department at White County Schools.
She said, we've got a family right now that's a little boy and a little girl, and they don't have the money.
He couldn't stand to see his neighbors go hungry.
I cry sometimes. These days. Some people just, it break your heart.
$14.
Yes, sir.
How about 15?
We're putting our student lunch fee.
He started collecting donations and putting the profits from his peanuts into the school.
He's got it rolled up in a rubber band and he's counted it out. Over years, that's how he has given almost $16,000. It's just to walk in with a wad of cash.
Millions of kids in the U.S. go hungry every year. And yet, according to the nonprofit Feeding America, 92 billion pounds of food are wasted annually. That's enough to make 145 billion meals. Let that sink in. We're talking about 473 billion worth of food, 38% of the country's entire supply, just thrown away. It doesn't make any sense, does it? No child should ever go hungry, especially when so much food is being wasted. Something has to change.
Step into a world of possibilities with New Earth, a groundbreaking series that shines light on holistic ways to live, work, and thrive. Join us weekly to discover new innovative ideas and explore the world around us as we, together, create our future, our New Earth.
When it comes to fish, the great debate of farmed versus wild caught has got people scratching their heads. Are you getting more nutrients from that wild caught fish, or is the farmed option just as good, or maybe not? Where your fish comes from can make a big difference, not just for nutrition, but for the environment too.
In 2024, the United Nations reported people are now eating more farmed fish than wild caught fish. This big shift is thanks to the rapid growth of aquaculture, or farmed fishing, which is producing more than 4 times more fish than it did 30 years ago. The industry's boom has been driven by government subsidies and support from different organizations, all working to reduce pressure on wild fish populations and create a more sustainable food supply. While aquaculture is often praised as a sustainable way to fight hunger, many overlooked issues still need attention.
The answer everybody told us was fish farming. I was going to help feed the planet, and I was still going to be able to work on the water. The smell of fish was still going to come home with me. So I went out to these pens, and I'm pulling them out. And it's neither fish nor food. They got a gray color. There's sea lice on them. I swear to God, they're stupider than regular fish. And so it's borrowing all the bad practices that are happening on land. Heavy use of pesticides, antibiotics. And this was industrial pig farming out in the ocean.
Fish farming is growing fast, but it has some big downsides. Many farmed fish like salmon, trout, and shrimp are fed wild-caught fish. In fact, nearly a fifth of the global wild fish caught each year end up as feed for aquaculture. What was meant to ease pressure on overfished oceans is now adding to the problem. A new study in Science Advances suggests fish farming may harm far more wild fish than we thought, challenging its sustainable reputation. Ethical concerns also surround the industry. A 2023 investigation found forced labor in Chinese fishing fleets and processing plants, with some of that seafood ending up on American dinner plates. Plus, catching wild fish for fish feed harms food security in regions like West Africa, where these fish could be feeding local communities instead of ending up in wealthier markets like Europe and North America. On top of this, Fish farms are often compared to factory farms on land, crowding fish into poor living conditions, causing significant animal suffering.
Factory-raised fish are similar to factory-raised animals and, terrestrial farms. They're putting a lot of living creatures into a confined space, feeding them low-quality diets that result in inflammation in their systems and reduced immune systems and higher likelihood of disease outbreak spreading through an entire population. An aquaculture site in shallow water, those fish, they're effluent. You have just like a cattle farm with all of these cattle confined into one small space. Their poop it becomes toxic. The poop falling directly underneath in a shallow environment without enough current is this high concentration of nitrogen that can completely kill the sea floor. And there's so many organisms that are integral to the biodiversity of these ecosystems that are being destroyed because of poorly sited, highly concentrated living creatures. Also, if you're feeding them antibiotics and hormones, that stuff then is in the effluent as well and going right back into the environment.
The fish farming industry is reducing reliance on wild-caught fish by using more corn and soy instead. This shift adds pressure to land resources, with farmed salmon contributing to deforestation, a concern already linked to feeding livestock. Farmed fish can also come with some health and nutritional concerns. Wild-caught fish tend to be more nutritious and are often considered tastier because of their natural diet and lower exposure to chemicals. Wild salmon, for instance, has fewer toxins and is healthier than farmed salmon. A 2022 study in the science journal Chemisphere found farmed fish often contain dioxins due to pollution, antibiotics, and pesticides in their systems. Some farms even use hormones to speed up growth, which raises real concerns about how safe farmed fish is to eat. Wild-caught fish might be more nutritious, but it's not without its problems. Overfishing has left some species struggling to survive, and bycatch and habitat destruction only make things worse. On top of that, most wild fish is exported, processed elsewhere, and shipped for weeks, which isn't exactly sustainable.
Farm-fed fish versus wild-caught fish. Is there really any difference? First of all, what does a farm-raised fish eat? They eat pellets. And these pellets do have fish meal. They do contain soy protein. They have GMO wheat, GMO corn. Of course, they have to add synthetic vitamins. Farm-fed salmon has to add food coloring or it's going to just be gray. Then there's also pesticide residues, plastic residues, chemicals like PCBs, and even antibiotic residues. This is going to give you lower amounts of omega-3 and higher amounts of omega-6 fatty acids, which are very inflammatory. Versus wild-caught, where they eat smaller fish, they're not given food coloring, they're not given soy, corn, antibiotics. Wild-caught fish is much higher in selenium and omega-3 fatty acids, which is really good for your heart and your brain.
The debate between farmed and wild-caught fish isn't black and white. It's all about what matters most to you. Balance the factors, do your research, and make choices that align with your values. As the industry evolves, it's also key for governments and organizations to push for a more sustainable, ethical future for our oceans.
A few times a year, the Canary Islands experience a phenomenon known as Kalima. During this weather event, winds carry sand and dust from the Sahara Desert, creating hazy skies and leaving a fine layer of dust on everything. UNN Field Messenger Emma reports on the effects of Kalima in her area.
Hi, this is Field Messenger Emma reporting from Fuerteventura, Spain in Europe. I don't know if you could see it here around me and behind me. We do have a weather phenomenon called Kalima. This is when the Canary Islands gets the wind from the Sahara full of dust. So there's loads of dust in the air now, and people with asthma and lung problems, they don't go out. Some people wear a face mask if it helps, but this happens when the trade winds come. And the trade winds is when the wind turns into another direction. So normally we have winds from the north, But today we have winds from the south and southeast. And this is normally around Christmas time. And in the harbor, there's lots of boats, sailboats, waiting for this trade wind. And that's because it's so much easier to cross the equator when you have the wind in the right direction. So this is the time that everybody has been waiting for, and it happens once a year, and it's called the trade winds have come.
It is a hot and dry wind that blows from the Sahara Desert in Africa and can bring with it high temperatures, low humidity, and sand and dust particles. These particles remain suspended in the air, creates a hazy, almost foggy appearance, and tinting the sky with a reddish golden hue. The Kalima events can last anywhere from a few hours to several days, depending on the strength and direction of the wind. So as you can see from the pictures, it is dusty, and the dust covers everything.
So it's much better to be inside than outside. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye.
In the southeast of Nigeria, when the planting season comes to an end, villagers gather in town squares to enjoy youth wrestling competitions. UNN Field Messenger Ugwamba Obasi shares this exciting tradition.
Hello, I'm Ugwamba Obasi from Southeast Nigeria. Reporting for the United Network News. Our mode of entertainment. Our community has a very rich cultural heritage, an aspect of which is the way we entertain ourselves. Towards the end of every planting season, when the farming workload has lessened, we gather at the village square to watch young men who challenge themselves to wrestle. In this way, the community is able to select among the young men of varied age grade those to be featured in the inter-village wrestling competition, which is always a yearly event. Thank you for watching Ugwamba Obasi for the United Network News.
Now it's your turn. Join our weekly meetings and become a field messenger. More information is available at our website, unitednetwork.earth. We're UNN, and we're taking back the news.